Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Meg Milligan, Associate Professor of Psychology at Troy University, and welcome to the third in our four-part series with rape counselors of East Alabama. And thank you very much for doing this. It's greatly appreciated and will be a tremendous resource for a lot of people. So tonight we are talking about consent and bystander training, and I will turn this over to Holland Myers. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Milligan. Like she said, I am Holland Myers. I am the prevention educator here at Rape Counselors of East Alabama. So tonight I will be covering two kind of training curriculums, one focused on consent and one on bystander intervention. So we also have an intern on. I don't know if she's able to come on the screen, but she is a human development and family studies intern at Auburn University this semester. So she will just be kind of watching and taking some notes so she can hopefully give this presentation soon. Okay, and I will pull up and share my screen. Okay. So I am going to start first. Dr. Milligan, can you see that on your screen?
Yes, that looks
Perfect.
good.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to start out first tonight with our bystander intervention training. So what is a bystander? So a bystander is someone who observes violence or witnesses conditions perpetrating violence. This can be harmful behaviors that could escalate to violence or harm, an assault, or behaviors leading up to an assault. And I think everyone at some point in their lives has probably been a bystander. If you're fortunate to have not been a bystander yet, unfortunately, you probably will at some point in your life. So if you were not aware, congratulations, you are a bystander, right? So that's again why this is so important, because this applies to everyone you will ever meet, everyone you will ever come in contact with. You will be a bystander, unfortunately, to some sort of violence or harm. And so trainings like this are incredible because they give you the tools to know, what to do, what actions to take next. So bystander intervention. Although a bystander is not directly involved, they have the choice to intervene, speak up, or do something. Someone who is present and witness what is happening is potentially in the position to discourage, prevent, or interrupt an incident. So bystander intervention is just a fancy way of saying, someone who takes action, someone who steps up and steps in when they need to. So have you ever heard of the bystander effect? The bystander effect occurs when the presence of others discourages an individual from intervening in an emergency situation, maybe against a bully, during an assault or another crime. The greater the number of bystanders, unfortunately, the less likely it is for one of them to, provide assistance to that person in distress. I know when I first heard this, I kind of thought the opposite, right? More people, maybe that would mean more people to intervene. But unfortunately, research has shown that, the more people that are present, the more people that are watching, they might think, someone else will step up, right? I don't have to do that. And so that's kind of what the issue we're trying to combat with this intervention training is saying, although we might have these reasons, we think we don't need to intervene, or we aren't the one that should intervene. We are. Every person in here has the power to intervene and step up. So we're going to talk about, how to push past those barriers and how to just completely abolish the bystander effect in general. So the bystander effect, like I said, it's the diffusion of responsibility, saying, it's not me, I can't handle that, it's not my responsibility, and it's a ripple effect, right? And if you look around and you see 20 people in the room and no one's doing anything about it, why would I, right? Why would I be the one to step up and step out? So that, again, is what we'll be covering tonight. So like everything, a real life example always helps, right? A lot of times we want to think this isn't a real problem or this doesn't actually happen. But from a case in 2009, more than 20 people witnessed a brutal assault of a 15-year-old high school student after a dance. And so unfortunately, no one there stepped up. No one there was an active bystander. Only one person actually told his sister about what he had seen, and she called the police. And she stepped up, even though she was not physically present. She was not, at the dance. She was not even the same age. So, thankful for her for being an active bystander. But, imagine how much quicker, we could have help could have gotten there, right? Had one of those 20 people actually been the one to step up and step out. So barriers to bystanders. These are going to be kind of our three things we're going to look at: personal barriers, social barriers, and general barriers. So we will hit on each of those. So barriers to bystanders. Personal. One may be an introvert. You might not feel comfortable speaking up. You may feel embarrassed. You might think, I don't know what to do or say. I may feel out of my comfort zone. You might say, I'm pretty introverted, right? I don't get involved with things like that. How do I even approach that situation? These are all completely understandable barriers. We recognize that at different points in our lives, we probably feel this way, right? About different situations. But although we may feel this way, that doesn't mean we need to let it stop us, right? So the next one is going to be a social barrier, right? So maybe your relationship among your peers may impact the way someone views a situation. So I don't want my friends to be mad at me. I feel like my friends would want me to stay out of their business. I want this person to like me, therefore I'm not going to stand up to them. And then general barriers. Some individuals try to not get involved by actively diverting their attention away from the altercation, right? Like, this is none of my business. I don't want to cause a scene. I generally stay out of drama, or I'm sure someone else will step in so I don't have to. And although we have, like I said, all of these barriers, they're all completely understandable, right? We all feel certain ways in different situations, but we want to push past those barriers, right? Imagine if you were the victim in that situation. You wouldn't want, all of the people around, all the bystanders to say, that's none of my business, right? Or I don't want to cause a scene. So how to be an active bystander? Be someone that doesn't tolerate violence or threats at all. Hold people accountable, even your friends, especially your friends, right? Be proactive. If it is your friends or people you have a relationship with, you should feel confident that you can talk to them and say, hey, I don't know if how you're treating that person or how you're talking to that person is okay, right? Let's talk about that. Also, setting a good example, right? Don't engage in harmful behaviors yourself. I know the saying, practice what you preach, right? So be an accountable person that for someone to listen to, right? How can they listen and trust you when you speak up to be an active bystander when maybe you are someone that acts out of violence or acts out of threats? So how to safely intervene. I know we're talking a lot about pushing past these barriers and intervening anyways, but again, you could be nervous, you could be scared, you could be hesitant. So let's talk about how to do that safely and ways to do that might work for you. So first of all, always trust your gut. It's better to be safe than sorry, right? Like I talked about earlier, think about if that victim were you or someone you love or someone you're close to. You would rather someone be safe than sorry. You would rather check in even if you didn't necessarily need to, right? So the 3 Ds of bystander intervention: direct, distract, and delegate. I'll talk a little bit more about each of those. So direct, talk directly to the person in trouble. So whether that is asking if they're okay, if you know them or if you don't know them super well, maybe pretending to be their friend to get them away from that perpetrator or that situation that might cause them violence or harm. Things like, hey, can I borrow your phone outside? I really need to make a call. Or, hey, will you come get another drink with me? Or, hey, do you know where the bathroom is? Could you come with me? Right? That's a way of intervening that maybe isn't standing up in front of a room of 30 people and saying, this isn't right, I'm stopping this. It's more of a direct, talking directly to the person in trouble, and it can kind of ease some of that tension, right? Everyone, needs someone to help them, with their phone outside, or everyone might need a friend to go get another drink with them or to go to the bathroom with them. So that can provide you a lot of ease in thinking it's very normal. It doesn't always have to be, a big scene in front of a bunch of people. Distract. So if that big scene in front of a bunch of people is what makes you feel more comfortable, then use that. Create a distraction. Spilling a drink, going to use the bathroom. Maybe say that someone's car is being towed, or the police are coming to break up the party. Whatever that distraction may be, right? To take time away and to take the attention off of the violence or the harm that's perpetrating. And then delegate. So there is power in numbers. Talk to a friend in the room that could help you. Find an authority for the situation, whether that's a bouncer, security, another friend, an adult in the room, right? Especially when someone's immediate safety is at risk, or if you fear that your safety might be at risk if you intervene. Power in numbers. Find someone to help you, right? It can be a lot less intimidating when we approach a situation, maybe with a friend or an adult to back us up. And then lastly, I know we've probably hit on these in our other 2 sessions, but just always a reminder what to do after an assault. So if you are a bystander to an assault, and if you're a bystander or the victim in general, just remembering to, number 1, receive medical attention, right? In a state of shock, we don't always realize that we might need that medical attention. So, getting to a doctor, getting to the hospital, whatever that looks like for the situation. And then reporting and getting support, right? So reporting might look different for everyone, whether that is to the authorities, to a Red Crisis Center like us, or just leaning on your friends and family for support. No one wants you to have to walk through something like that alone. So lean on your people for support, whoever those people may be. And what to do when someone discloses an assault to you. Believe their story. Say things like, I believe you. It took a lot of courage for you to tell me about this. Remind them that they're not to blame. It's not your fault. You did nothing to deserve this. Give them help, but just a reminder to let them decide, right? A lot of their power has been taken away in this situation. So not telling them what they should do, but maybe letting them talk through what would work best for them. Be patient. Everyone handles traumatic things differently, and don't gossip. If someone disclosed an assault to you, it's because they trusted you. They believe that you're reliable. So don't betray that trust, right? Don't gossip. Now, if you do need to consult an adult to help you with that, or maybe law enforcement or support, if you worry that someone's safety is at risk, that's not gossiping. Gossiping is going to be maybe going and telling your friends or their classmates or whatever that may be. And then just our services, which I know y'all all have, and then resources for survivors. I know we don't have anyone on the Zoom right now, but Dr. Milligan or Rachel or Dondra, do y'all have any questions about the bystander training before I move into consent? No, okay, perfect. And for anyone that's watching this, later on after it's posted, our number is right there at the top, Rape Counselors of East Alabama. If you had any questions about this presentation that you needed clarification on, give us a call. We'd be happy to answer any questions. That hotline is 24/7, and no question is, a silly question. If anything didn't make sense or you need further clarification, just please don't hesitate to reach out. If y'all will just give me a second to open up my next presentation. Okay. Are you all able to see my screen again? Great. Okay. So consent, this is kind of the second half of our training tonight. Why it's important, what it is, what it isn't, and what exactly it looks like. So a disclaimer, which since there aren't any people on the Zoom right now, I will skip that. Here we go, a preview. So we're going to cover with consent, why it's important, what it is and what it isn't, and some discussion questions to get you thinking, and then the moving forward steps. So why consent is important. These are just some kind of alarming statistics. I know every time I look at this, it still doesn't sit easy with me, but just 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 men, and half, so 1 in 2 transgender individuals will experience some sort of sexual violence in their lifetime. So I know that that can be jarring and that can be kind of shocking, but I think it is important that we put those statistics out there, because I know, especially for me, before I started working here, I thought, well, that doesn't happen a lot, right? That it won't happen to me. But unfortunately it is happening. That's why we're having to have these conversations. So just putting that out there for you all to see. So why consent is important. Lack of consent results in sexual violence, plain as day. And every 73 seconds in the United States, someone is sexually assaulted. And then just learning about consent is the key to prevention, right? My job is the prevention educator. So what I'm trying to do is do everything I can to educate, students, just community members, individuals in general, about everything they can do to prevent sexual violence. I know that sometimes we can do everything right, and it still ends up happening, but that's the whole thing with prevention. We're trying to educate you as much as we can so you are aware. So what consent is? Consent by definition is cooperation in act or attitude pursuant to an exercise of free will and with knowledge of the nature of the act. I know that that is kind of a confusing definition. All consent is, it can sound like a scary big word. Consent is just saying that you are okay with what is happening, right? And we all give consent every day. We've been giving consent since we were little babies, right? Consent is not just a sexual term. I know a lot of times we associate it only with sexual acts, but you consent on the daily, whether that is, going in for a handshake or going in for a hug, saying, I'm okay with giving you a handshake, right? I'm okay with physically interacting with you like that. So consent is easy. This is a great acronym that we like to teach because consent is easy when you break it down like this. It's easy to remember. Number 1, consent is enthusiastic. Consent is freely given. It's not given after coercion or intimidation or threats, right? So with enthusiastic, we just mean that you can tell that the person has thought about what's happening. They're not having to be talked into it, right? They know for a fact that yes, they want to consent with what is happening. Next, it is able to be retracted. You can change your mind even after already saying yes. With this one, I know I get the most funny looks, but if you think about it, if we were in a class, I would probably ask you all, if you have ever changed your mind about anything, raise your hand, right? Whether that was when I was 9, I didn't like mashed potatoes, but now I do. Or if it's something as complex as, a sexual act, right? It's able to be retracted. You are able to change your mind. Also, you don't have to give a reason for changing your mind, right? You never know if someone has maybe had a negative experience since the last time they said yes, or some days we have bad days. They might just not want to participate when maybe they had before, right? For whatever reason, they are able to change their mind. They're able to retract their yes, which is another reason why consent needs to be given with every single act, right? You don't need to just assume that because they've done it once that they want to do it again. Next, consent is sober. So someone who is under the influence of drugs or alcohol cannot legally give consent. So that one, I know with college age people or people over the age of 21, it can be tricky and it can, again, cause a lot of funny looks. But we just want you to be educated and know, in terms of legal proceedings in the courts, you all need to be aware that someone who is under the influence of drugs or alcohol cannot give consent. And then lastly, consent is a yes. It's only an enthusiastic, sober yes that counts as consent. Again, it's periodically checking in, maybe asking for consent multiple times. Is this okay? Do you want to stop? Are you still okay with what's going on? Consent is not hesitation. Consent is not silence. It's not assuming. It's not having to talk someone into something. The legal age of consent in the state of Alabama is 16 years of age. So, someone under 16 years of age would not be able to legally give consent. So just some discussion questions to kind of think about. You can obviously think of these on your own or things to look into. Just, what is rape culture? How is rape culture perpetrated in the media? How does rape culture impact our view of consent? Also, stigmatization. Why is consent taboo, right? Why do I feel uncomfortable saying the word consent? Why do I feel uncomfortable asking for consent? What can we do to change that, right? And something I like to talk about with students a lot is just general respect for others, right? And everyone has their own opinions, their own morals, their own set of beliefs. Everyone has those for themselves. Don't ever let someone make you think that they don't have those for themselves, right? So just opening up the floor and talking about those things, what are people's boundaries? What do they give consent to? What do they not? Because that really is the only way to take that stigmatization off of it, right? Is if we make it normal. We show respect when people talk about their boundaries, or when we're asking for consent, maybe if someone denies consent, don't make them feel ostracized for that, right? They're a person, they're making decisions for their body. So again, just kind of some questions and some topics to think about, and kind of just to spur you on into, how you can use that in your relationships and in the future. So moving forward, what can we do to change the stigma and start these conversations? So like I said, being honest with yourself, own preconceptions about consent, and be aware of what may need to change, right? Candid. The subject of sex can be awkward, but speaking candidly makes us more comfortable about it, right? That's where that respect comes in. You will all have to have conversations like this at some point in your life, and I understand it's uncomfortable, but if we start working at making it a little less uncomfortable, a little more normal, because it is normal, that really will play into how other people feel when they're having to have that conversation with you. Concepts that are reiterated and revisited more are more likely to stick, right? So when it comes to consent, right, that's not a one-time conversation. So just get into the practice of asking for consent all the time, right? And making it normal. And then just early. The earlier we're exposed to this concept, the better. So like I talked about earlier, consent is not only viewed in a sexual realm, right? We've been giving consent since we were little. So just recognizing that and, understanding that it isn't this crazy taboo topic that just came about whenever, we turned 16 or whenever we hit puberty. And then again, just our services. I think we have these at the end of every PowerPoint. And yeah, our resources. So again, kind of what I talked about earlier, if you have any questions about anything I talked about with consent, do not hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to clarify anything or answer anything that maybe didn't make total sense. But with that, stop sharing my screen. Okay. Dr. Milligan, that is all I had. If you have any questions or anything you would like me to dive deeper into, just let me know.
Well, thank you very much. That was it's very informative, and I appreciate you giving us access to all the phone numbers and websites and your location, and encouraging interaction, because that's important. Try to
Yeah.
break down those barriers to communication.
Exactly, yes.
Yes, we need to talk about all of this stuff.
I know.
Yeah, yeah, great conversations. Well, thank you very much. And with that, I think we'll end the recording.
Okay, perfect.